minute or two once everybody starts hopping in, and then record before we go. All right, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to give it another minute or two, let a few more folks hop on, and then we'll get started. All right, we are 2 minutes after the start, so I'm going to go ahead and get rolling. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Benjamin James. I'll be your host and moderator for this afternoon. I want to welcome you to our virtual workshop on building a cutting-edge ITFM solution. So just a little bit of housekeeping up front. We will be recording this, so we'll start recording here shortly. As far as questions and answers, we'll be doing Q&A throughout, or towards the end, but throughout, if you do have questions that come up, feel free to post those in the chat. We might answer those live or might answer them over chat as they come in. But with that, let's get started. So I'm going to go ahead and hit record, and we'll be able to share this out afterwards. Oh, actually, we are recording. So there we go. Perfect. So again, thank you for coming today for our webinar on IT financial management. We all know that mapping technology investments can be a challenge for even the savviest organizations. Spreadsheets and legacy processes typically provide subpar visibility into those expense drivers for IT, and siloed systems often leave the business questioning its ROI of its technology investments. So fortunately, the path to better IT spending decisions and smarter decisions starts with the data that you're already capturing today in your ServiceNow instance. So we invited our award-winning ISP partner, Proven Optics, to discuss their detailed framework for automating and centralizing IT financial management, all on the Now platform. So we're going to cover what it means to manage your IT financials natively in ServiceNow, how ServiceNow customers are putting IT financial management into practice today, how to construct that solution that fits your organization's needs. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have some live Q&A at the end with our speaker, Bill Miller. So without further ado, Bill, I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce yourself and get us rolling this afternoon.
Fantastic. Thank you and welcome, everyone. So again, my name's Bill Miller, and I'm with Proven Optics, and I'm going to be talking about the Proven Optics approach on ServiceNow for managing IT financial management capabilities within the organization. A little bit about me. I've been in the IT financial management space since it's been about 23, 24 years now. I used to work for Nationwide Insurance, managing the IT budget there, which was at the time north of about $1.3 billion. And we were actually able to return $50 to $70 million of IT spend every year, either because we found efficiencies within the organization, or we found better priorities, or we were able to recapture dollars that weren't being spent effectively. So lots of opportunities there. We're going to talk a little bit about that approach and that methodology. Since leaving Nationwide, I have worked with about 100 organizations to build out their ITFM practices. And so today we're going to walk through and talk through some of those outcomes and the lessons learned along that journey. Our agenda today is going to start with the negative side, which is why IT financial management practices fail. So we're going to talk a little about that. We're going to talk about constructing a state-of-the-art practice and what goes into that. And then we're going to talk about leveraging Proven Optics and ServiceNow to actually create that solution in a way that's sustainable and scalable. So why IT financial management practices fail? It's been my experience that there are really a few key, common, repeatable fail factors that have driven a lot of the challenges with IT financial management practices. The first one, either it's a manual process that's working on SharePoint or Excel or some combination thereof, and maybe a workflow that's really email driven. Or in some cases, organizations have bought other software products to help automate. And a lot of times those products are overly complex, and you end up building really complex models or complex budgeting practices. And it becomes really difficult for your users to understand the process and to trust the process. I've seen a lot of organizations get overly focused on data precision. And there is a reality that we need data. We need that data to have some accuracy to it. But at the end of the day, what we're looking for in our IT financial management practice is trends. We're looking for directionally correct information. And so getting overly precise in the data actually doesn't provide any additional value, and oftentimes causes more distrust in the actual outputs of the process. Creating budgets that have difficult controls or difficult management structure to them. These are budgets that from finance we need to refine, add additional detail, and interim approval processes and mechanisms. So we're trying to add additional overlays beyond what the finance part of the organization is doing to really control and manage these IT budgets effectively. We build cost models that are difficult to understand. And I tell organizations all the time, your service owners, your IT leaders, your business unit consumers, they spend 2, 3, maybe 5 hours a month really looking at the cost model and the cost model outputs, which means in the intervening 160 hours of work that's come since the last time they reviewed this information, there's no retention. And so when you have difficult or complex models, it leads to distrust, and distrust leads to not looking to use it. Failure to leverage operational data. So one of the things that's critical in making a IT financial management practice effective and a cost model useful is the non-financial data. You can't build a model just on the financial allocations. You need operational metrics, because we want to link the financial outcomes to business decisions and operational changes. So whether this is simple like laptop counts, device counts that are out in the environment, or more complicated like application TCO elements, what's the infrastructure, what cloud elements are supporting this application, we need the non-financial elements to really make the practice functional. Failure to define a maturity roadmap. It's important to know that you are where you are. There's a place that you're going. There's going to be data sets missing. There's going to be elements of the practice that are immature. And if you don't identify that and articulate that roadmap about how you're going to improve that, it becomes very challenging for the organization to see the eventual outcome if today's practice is missing certain elements within the process. And probably the most significant one is a failure to identify the decisions or the outcomes you're trying to achieve. At the end of the day, the only purpose for having an IT financial management practice is to help enable decision-making and to identify when you have an outcome, did you achieve that outcome with the ROI or the expense profile that you were anticipating, expecting, or planning. We already know how much IT costs. The finance team built a budget. We already know the answer to that. What we're looking for here is the interim process of how we decide, prioritize, and validate that our IT finances are actually delivering technical outcomes that benefit our business. The other thing that I have found consistently is that IT financial management practices, if they don't add value, as soon as funding becomes more scarce, interest dries up. if they don't add value that's broad and understood, as soon as your sponsor or primary champion leaves that role, the process or the practice ends or dries up. And so it's very, very important to talk about how IT financial management practices add value. So the first thing is they fail to add value when they fail to automate. And the automation is the ability to, on a regular periodic basis, actually execute the elements of the practice. Easiest example is run a cost model and run it every month within a relatively reasonable period of the prior month's close. So by business day 10, we've got our current model up to date, and we understand what happened in the prior period. That repeatability requires not just financial data, but operational data to be updated constantly within the process. Sustainable means that we can go through a process of getting that data, operational and general ledger, without having to have a data call or some kind of large lift effort. The data is readily available, and we can get at it with relative ease. Scalable, meaning that I can make this thing smaller, bigger, as I need to, add new services, retire services, extend to other parts of the organization, put non-IT elements within it. I can put facilities management type stuff in it, or fleet management, or other types of operational things as well. And if I'm repeatable and sustainable, and I'm scalable, and I can talk about the business logic that's used to operate my model, I become defensible. And when I'm repeatable, sustainable, scalable, and defensible, that makes me credible. And when I'm credible, my output from my practice will be used to drive business decisions. So failing to automate this really undermines its effectiveness and its ability to add value. Another is when we fail to integrate. And integrate, not from the standpoint of integrate data, but integrate into how the operations of the business actually use this data. It has to be interesting. It has to have an answer to so what. I can tell you the first time I go through, a laptop cost $500 a month. The third month I tell you that a laptop cost $500 a month, you're going to say, so what? What do you want me to do with this? And in that process of a so what, we need that this practice allows for predictability, and that it's reactive to changes within the operations, so that a decision maker can make a decision and then actually see that decision show up in a reasonable time within the process. We also fail to add value when we fail to educate. And educate means that no matter what any leadership team, business unit group, finance organization says, the reality is the vast majority don't know what to actually do with this information. So we go through a process, we build a budget, we build in the controls, we build in a cost model. We may even go so far as to do a recovery process or a show back mechanism. And now we're presenting this on a dashboard. But at the end of the day, the folks receiving the information, if we don't educate them on what they're supposed to do with that dashboard information, it becomes really challenging for us to add value in the long term. So I've been at this for 20 plus years. I think it's interesting that a lot of organizations are like at their second or third bite at this apple. They've done it before. They've had some level of success. Many times that success has ebbed and flowed, and then we end up coming in and having a conversation about iteration 3, or how do I mature this to the next level, or how. So why does this keep rearing its head? Well, there's really 3 elements to this. Number one, no business today will be less dependent on its technical capabilities in 5 years to be successful than it is today. In fact, you'll be more technically dependent in 5 years than you are today. Technology is not getting cheaper. It is not going to be less expensive to operate the technical aspects of your business in 5 years. And so as a result, the percentage of spend, the percentage of revenue that has to be allocated toward technology continues to push upward. And there's a lot of resistance to this upward push because the non-technical part of the organizations don't understand exactly what the technology is doing for them. But probably the most critical reason is the one we have here, because the business expects value from its IT investments. And we have to connect the dots between the dollars we spend and the value that technology capability delivers to our organization. And that's why this keeps coming back. It'll never not be something that organizations want to be able to do. When we go out and talk to organizations, what we find is that there really are three major categories of interest when they're looking at their IT financial management capabilities and how they can make those capabilities effective and add value within their organization. So those three categories are around IT efficiencies, IT optimization, and IT value. Under efficiencies, we're talking about cost reductions. We're looking at answering the question, can we reduce costs? What impact does that cost reduction have on our ability to continue to operate effectively, both technically and from a business standpoint? Optimization is all about, is this the right amount to be spending on technology? And when we buy something, are we using it? Are we effective at using it? And so examples of that are like ELAs. We bought a Microsoft ELA. It came with a nice little package of licenses. Are we actually using that capacity efficiently and effectively? The same thing goes for resources. We have people who are executing in the technology space. Are we using those resources effectively? And so optimization is about, can I stay within that same spend, but get more for my money with optimization and utilization? The IT value conversation is probably the most interesting because it is really seldom about the actual cost of IT. It is almost always about communicating and connecting the dots between what is spent on technology and how that technology enables the business to achieve its outcomes. And it's answering questions like, are we investing in the right way? Is there alignment between our investments and our strategy? The most fascinating one I see on a pretty regular basis is we have a strategy for how we want technology to enable our business, but 80% or 90% of the money we spend isn't spent on achieving that outcome or even enabling that outcome. It's spent on doing the things that are legacy, the old strategy and the old things that we have. That legacy spend, it creates technical debt and other types of challenges. And so really kind of connecting the dots on what IT dollars are going for, how they are benefiting the business, what outcomes they're enabling, really helps to answer that IT value conversation. When we talk to organizations, it's always in these three categories. Some are pretty siloed. Most have a little bit in each. And at the bottom, we just kind of said from our experience, about 45% of our organizations are looking at cost reductions. The current economic environments are absolutely driving that conversation today. About 25% are looking to optimize their costs. In other words, they don't want to take technology dollars down. They just want to make sure the technology dollars they're spending are being managed effectively and they're getting the best return on those dollars. And there's always this value conversation and this ability to open that communication and connect the dots for the business between what we're spending on technology and the business outcomes that we're achieving with those dollars. So where does IT financial management fit into the IT department, the technical part of the organization? And then how do we enable that? And then we'll start to kind of talk about some of the tooling that brings those pieces together. So this idea of running IT like a business is not new. It's been around as long as I've been doing this. I've been hearing this catchphrase. It's interesting to me. I guess if I had a wish or a fantasy, I would come up with some catchphrase like this and then never actually define it, just tell everybody they should go do it. We couldn't get a good sort of running IT like a business definition from any of the consulting firms that were kind of talking about this. So we ended up really coming at it from the proven optics lens, that IT financial management capability lens, and creating our definition of what it means to run IT like a business. And that's what you see here in this diagram. It looks a little complicated, but let me give you a quick walkthrough and it'll make sense, I think, when you're done. when I think about the technology department and what it does for the organization, it really has three main functions: IT delivery and operations, IT management, and then the financial management of those two elements. IT delivery and operations is really all about what the organization technically delivers to the consuming business units that it supports. It really is about how we acquire technology, how we implement and integrate that technology, and then how we create access to and deliver that technology to the end users within the business unit. We build apps, we buy apps, we subscribe to cloud resources, we build a data center, we buy hardware. All of those things really fit under the IT delivery and operations elements of the IT organization. And I would say that's probably 80% of what IT organizations do. And it's where the vast majority of the dollars that get funded into technology go. They go to pay those salaries and to pay for those hardware and software contracts, and any third-party folks that are in there helping us deliver. IT management is about the governance structure. It's the overhead elements of really about what leadership does in trying to set direction and prioritization. It's the primary place where our business unit as consumers engage into the IT delivery and operations part of the organization. We see the service desk kind of straddling the hump there. We see if you do a chargeback where you have a service catalog or you have identified service rates, if you're in that space, that's where this is getting communicated out to the business. It's where project and portfolio management sits and the governance of IT sits. It's where all of our security rules sit, our enterprise architecture. So it's really about managing that IT operation and delivery function with the rules and the oversight that we want it to make it effective. That's about 15% and about 15% of the dollars. And I would say that's operational dollars, right? Because if you're managing a capital flow, there might be more capital dollars that are flowing up through that PPM process and then down into the actual project delivery that would happen within IT delivery. Cybersecurity sits up there as well, right? So 15%. The other thing that I think is interesting is in a lot of organizations, there's an enormous amount and probably a disproportionate amount of effort managing the project spend. You have more senior folks engaged in looking at that. You have more prioritization talks, more discussion about projects than what is 80% of the spend typically, which is what's already in production. And the last leg is this finance piece, which is about 5% of the effort. One of the big challenges I always tell organizations is in that IT management sphere, you've got your senior VPs, you got your EVPs, you got your VPs, however you're structured, directors, like your senior titles sit up there. But most often the finance organization assigns like a pretty low person title-wise. And so that person sitting in that role, trying to support the financial elements, oftentimes is struggling from a title perspective to have weight and authority with that IT management part of the organization. So what is in that IT financial management? You can call it TBM, technology business management, is a flavor that you can, as an overlay, put on this. If ITIL sitting on the operational side, you could have TBM sitting on the finance side. So those are kind of like those overlays that you can have within that process. But we're doing our cost modeling. We're doing our service costing. We're creating our rates. We're generating operational budgets and forecasts with greater granularity and more specificity and additional control points that are beyond what finance is typically doing. We might be managing a capital budget, and we're doing a lot of reporting, and that's what's happening within that space. So that triangle of all those pieces interacting is really what it means to run IT like a business. And the financial overlay, the connection between IT management and finance, is those service rates, that service consumption, that ability to do cost recovery. But most of your budgeting and forecasting is happening at that IT operations level for sure. So if ServiceNow as a platform kind of sits as an underpinning to running IT like a business, think about your asset management, think about your PPM, project management portfolio elements, think about your cybersecurity management, think about the service desk, your service level management processes. It's kind of sitting your CMDB, right, for the configuration, so you can understand your enterprise architecture. It's kind of sitting as an underpinning to this functional capability. And what Proven Optics does is extend that capability of the ServiceNow platform into these financial areas. And so the nice part is we're interconnected with what you're already doing. Remember, we talked about fail point of operational data. Well, ServiceNow, depending on what modules you've enabled, has an enormous amount of operational data that can be leveraged by our practice. And then we can onboard by loading data up from our general ledger, from our procurement system, from our for doing invoicing and chargeback. There's a lot of ways, our cloud bill, lots of things that we can onboard into ServiceNow through the Proven Optics lens, and then connect the dots between those operational data points and the financial elements that make up the process. Other great thing kind of underpinning all that's the workflow, right? So we can connect this and make sure we have the right people engaged at the right point. So one of the big things we get asked about is really, what is this decision matrix, right? So we talked about the number one fail point of financial management practices in technology is not actually thinking about how to enable decisioning within the organization. And so the first thing we wanted to do was take a step back and say, okay, well, how do organizations make decisions? And if we assume for a moment that we're going to make decisions on the premise of data or data sets we have available versus leadership just saying, it feels like we should go that direction, my gut tells me, right? We're talking about, do I have actually data elements that can help me enable this decision? And by the way, if I have those data elements to enable that decision, I have the data elements to track the outcomes of that decision, which is one of the best sort of outcomes for using IT financial management practices effectively. So how are decisions enabled? Well, all decisions come down to really being a trade-off between price, performance, and risk. And what that means is that if we decide that we don't like the risk profile of a particular technology or of our network environment or of a particular application, then we're going to go down the path of making an investment to improve that risk profile, which means that now I've got a price. Price is going up and risk is going down, and there's an inverse relationship between those. Performance is literally the trade-off of how fast, how responsive, how quick the system is, and its underpinning driver is the environment that is hosting whatever that particular capability or function is. So, for example, if I have a homegrown application that has, 10,000 users that are using it to execute a business process, but they log in and it's slow to respond, or it doesn't update quickly, or the user interface is clunky, or whatever it is, that performance I want to change or improve, I'm going to make an investment. And again, performance improves, price goes up. And so the reason why we have these three elements as a trade-off is there's no such thing as lower risk, better performance, lower price. I shouldn't say no such things. Those things come along, and when they do, we buy the heck out of them, right? We just buy because it's a great opportunity for the organization. There hasn't been one recently. I think there was a hope that cloud and moving our infrastructure up into the cloud would actually do this for us. And what we're coming to find for a lot of organizations is that's not actually true. So the reality is improving risk and improving performance have the inverse relationship. They drive up price. Well, if our IT financial management practice is only talking about how much technology costs, the only response we're ever going to get is it's too expensive. Instead, we need to extend the conversation and explain, when you make this investment, when you pay this price, you get this risk profile and this performance. And if you don't like this price, then you have to choose a lesser risk profile or a lesser performance. If risk, and I think about cybersecurity events, a breach event, all of a sudden the focus is only on mitigating risk, and suddenly price is no issue, right? And so we know this actually works, and we know that this conversation is real. It's just now about enabling that conversation effectively in a system where I can look at operational data, risk data, and price data in one spot. And again, that's why, between Proven Optics and the ServiceNow platform, we love the way that we're able to actually execute that efficiently. So when you use Proven Optics on ServiceNow, you're getting a complete IT financial management practice, from budgets and forecasts and actuals, where you can formulate and track and manage IT costs and manage those additional approval levels and manage those additional elements of control that allow you to be effective in returning dollars that are not going to get utilized, in identifying efficiencies and opportunities to reduce cost, in calibrating overall optimization, against capacity, making sure we're getting fully utilized. You get a cost model that allows you to use whatever model you want, TBM, ITIL, EDUCAUSE, a custom model, it doesn't matter. Some combination of them, it doesn't matter, but we're now able to know our cost to deliver a capability or a service. We can track it, we can manage it, and we're able to be very effective in learning key things about our services and our service design, our service utilization, and the cost of that particular capability. One great example, I get a lot of questions about application TCO, and one of the simplest and one of my favorite starting places for app TCO is to take the cost of an application from the infrastructure stack all the way up to the application itself, like that full code bed, and getting all that information. I know how much that application costs to operate and to maintain on an annual basis. Divide it by the number of users, right? So now I know this application, I can compare apps. That has a $5 per user. That is a $10,000 per user cost. Now, that doesn't tell you that the $10,000 per user app is a better or worse app. It just tells you the cost. So now we can go have that value add conversation. What is that application doing? What risk profile does it have? Does it perform well? And what business process does it enable? And does that $10,000 per user cost make sense? Great place to have a conversation. And then if you're doing chargeback and showback, we have a capability around that as well. But I will tell you, I encourage showback whether you're doing chargeback or not, because remember, one of those fail points, IT value, was the ability to articulate clearly to the consuming business unit, these are the services you consume, this is the quantity you consume them in, and this is how much it costs, whether you're charging them for it or not, to deliver that capability to you. It's a great opportunity to enable that conversation as well. Again, Proven Optics on ServiceNow, what are you getting, right? First of all, you're getting consolidated data. Those of us who've been around doing this for a while, we've bought point solutions. We've gone through the process of integrating data, moving data back and forth. It is painful. It can cause problems. It creates additional security issues and challenges. As point solutions get upgraded, oftentimes those connection points break. So we find ourselves constantly in maintenance mode trying to fix stuff. ServiceNow, consolidated data, you get access. As long as you have permission, right? You can get access to anything on the platform you need data-wise to execute your financial management practice effectively. We're 100% native, which means that you're going to inherit all of the security profiles into the Proven Optics application that you would from any ServiceNow module. In fact, the platform doesn't see us any different than that looks at any other module. So you get all those access controls and you get full access to workflow and managing workflow. You get full access to performance analytics and reporting to actually be able to report this data, all your financial data is now available to other areas, other modules on the platform. So if you're looking to understand the cost of a ticket, if you're looking to understand the cost of an outage, if you're looking to understand the cost of a security event, all of this information is available to those modules now. And suddenly that dollar sign element is much more easy to get and attribute on a repeatable, sustainable, and scalable basis, which means it's credible. Consistently the same numbers, and it makes sense in terms of the calculations and what you're able to show with that. And then you get this low code foundation, because what we have come to realize is while the overall practice of IT financial management has consistency and applicability across many industries, across many companies, at the end of the day, there's no other company like yours. No other organization has built apps like you have, has deployed technologies the way that you have, has a business environment like you have. And so that low code foundation means that if you do actually invest in ServiceNow and a proven optics solution, you can actually tune that solution to 100% fit. You don't have to put up with changing to somebody else's process or changing to a vendor-specific approach to doing something. So, and the nice thing about all of that is, I don't know the recent numbers, but there's something like 500,000 ServiceNow sysadmins on the planet. Finding individuals who have the skill set who can help you achieve that fine-tuning, not hard, right? You buy a unique standalone solution and you're going to be beholden to some very specific skill sets from that standpoint. So lots of great elements. Again, if we think about why IT financial management practices fail, it really comes down to this ability to create an automation that allows for repeatable and sustainable data collection, analysis, and presentation so that we can actually track and see what's going on. Just a couple quick examples. Campbell's Soup, fun little story. I think it was a year and a half ago now, CIO pinged me. He had taken that price performance risk decision matrix, had gone to the CFO, and for the first time in, I think, 15 years, got a bump in his IT investment budget, right? He was able to articulate clearly, these dollars done doing this will mitigate this risk or improve this performance, and I can track it for you. And so that was like the CFO was like, I wish everybody would come and talk like that. Cigna working on total cost of ownership, right? Really trying to understand, they have a lot of apps in the environment. That's probably more than 2,000. Really trying to understand, of the apps we have, how many users do we have? What does it cost per user? Where is there overlap? You're trying to do app rationalization. This is an element. It's not the decision matrix. It's part of the decision matrix to understand, well, these applications do similar things. This one costs this per user. This costs this per user. Great additional ability to understand where to invest or reinvest. And then we have, our federal agencies that are doing chargeback and showback because they are accountable back to Congress as to how the dollars they were appropriated got used within the organization. So just some examples of some great outcomes organizations are experiencing within that. So I know we've kind of hit the time mark there for the presentation and the elements, and I hope this was very useful. And I will turn it back over to Ben. I see a couple of chat questions might have popped up. I can't see what the questions are, and we can see if there's other questions out there as well.
Thanks, Bill. It's a fantastic overview on financial management, and really it's a unique solution that y'all are bringing to our customers. So for the Q&A portion, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we can bring you off mute. You can ask them live. But the first one we have out here for you, Bill, is what do we do if our company doesn't have the right data or enough data to get started with ITFM?
I get this question a lot, and I will tell you, if you're running your company today and you are delivering technology, meaning your applications work, your infrastructure is available, people can log in, you've got the data. That's not a problem at all. The challenge might be getting the data in a consumable format, centralizing the data someplace where you can get access to it. But the reality is, unless you are totally dysfunctional and not able to even log in and use applications, you have the data. And my guess is if you couldn't log in and be functional, you wouldn't be on this call. So absolutely, you have the data. What we can talk about is stepping into the process through what we call proxies. In other words, ways to estimate what the data might actually be when we can't get direct access to it, to begin the conversation, to at least enable the discussion, because getting access to data may require an investment, and you want to be able to actually explain the value of going after that data and providing that data in an effective way.
That's great. It sounds very similar to all the other conversations we tend to have in this space,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
The data exists, it's somewhere, but we
It's there. It could be on Susie's laptop, but it's there.
Right.
I promise.
Let's the process, automate the workflows around it, bring it into a centralized, database so we can see all of it and have that full 360 context of what we're working with, whether it's financials, assets, strategic portfolios, app portfolios.
Exactly.
That's right. All right. If there's not any other questions, I'm not seeing any hands up or any other questions coming through the chat. So I'm gonna give it one more minute. Any closing thoughts, Bill? See if we have any final questions come in.
Yeah, so a couple of things I'm happy to share kind of in the experiences that I've had over the last 20 years doing this. There's really kind of three key takeaways that really, I think, help organizations with this process. So one is, if you're not started, get started, because you can't manage what you can't measure. I know it's trite, but the problem is it's true. And so if you don't have good financial information, and the best way I can describe this is, if you're in finance and you're getting your information from finance, they're sending it over in the construct of salary, travel, training, hardware, software, TCOM, right? The problem is nobody in your organization is reaching out to the technology department and saying, I need 2 weeks of salary and a month of depreciation. They're picking up the phone and they're saying, I need an app built. I need a laptop. I need help resetting my password. They're asking for service. And so the translation, we know it takes salary, travel, training, hardware, software, and TCOM to actually deliver a help desk, to actually build an application. But if we don't know these salary dollars are my help desk salary dollars, and these technologies enable that first time final with all my help desk, and these dollars are salary dollars for building apps, we have a really hard time explaining what's going on in technology and how we're delivering value to the organization. That process, while it might seem overwhelming, is actually quite simple to get started on. And once you're started, you can't go back. People get hooked on it.
Absolutely. Right. It's not just about, quantifying the cost. It's about tracking that value over time as well. Right. So it's that whole end-to-end picture, especially as executives are looking to make those investments, and we're all being asked to do more with less, as it tends to go year after year. So, well, Bill, I want to thank you for your time today. You and the Proven Optics team, great overview. Really appreciate the insights and background that you were able to provide. So thank you to the audience for participating and attending today. We will be sharing out this recording later. So keep your eyes open for the emails coming out with the follow-ups, and have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.